the speech beginning. So we'll check in with you afterwards as well and see what you thought about the speech.
Yes.
So thanks so much, Jacob, for speaking with us. So Amna, yeah, it's a diverse group in here, ages and ethnicities, and so I think people are going to have their own issues that they really want to hear. And in this hour speech, you should have time to get to a lot of it, but we can check in after as well with some of the viewers here. Hi, where's the wave? More enthusiasm from the crowd here.
So much excitement there in Harlem. Thank you, Charlie. She's ABC's Charlie James at a watch party in Harlem. If you're just tuning in, we're just about 30 minutes away from the president's very last State of the Union address. Thank you for joining us on abcnews.com. We now have the opportunity to talk to Allie Weinberg, who is in the Capitol. Allie, are you there? Can you tell us a little bit more about who is expected to be those special guests in the First Lady's box?
Hi there. Yes, there is a number of individuals who are in the First Lady's box. They're being honored by the President and the First Lady. Among them, you may remember this individual from the famous Humans of New York series that's on Instagram and online. His name is Rafai Hamo, and he is a Syrian refugee. He was a scientist in his native Syria. He had fled about 4 years ago, and he came to the United States and was featured recently in a Humans of New York feature on Instagram. And the president actually responded to his story as featured on this very popular website that just has a picture of people and then a little description of what they're going through. And the Humans of New York author had just done a series on Syrian refugees. And as a result of this man in his 40s was invited to the State of the Union to be a personal guest of the president. It's not a coincidence that he is a Syrian refugee. There's actually a number of Democratic members of Congress who have invited both Syrian refugees and Muslim Americans to be their guests tonight. Democrats say it's in an attempt to show solidarity with the Muslim American community as well as Syrian refugees in light of a lot of heated rhetoric that's been going along, some of it from the Republican candidates for president. So 22 Democratic members of Congress tonight, both in the House and the Senate, have invited either Muslim Americans or Syrian refugees to be their guests. Aside from President Obama, they also include President Obama's guest. They also include a 9-year-old Syrian boy who is the guest of Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. This boy lost both of his arms in bombing raids in his native country of Syria and has fled his country and is now in the United States and is now going to watch the State of the Union live.
Allie, you've covered these events before, and you mentioned, that one really interesting guest. I think a lot of people know about his story, as you mentioned, from Humans of New York, and Brandon Stanton, the man behind that effort. I do want to point out the president himself has just taken to social media to tweet a little tease about tonight's address, saying, "I'm treating this last State of the Union just like my first, because I'm still just as hungry. I hope you tune in because it's for you." So clearly trying to get people excited to watch tonight and listen to his message when he delivers it in just over a half an hour's time now. But getting back to this this one angle of the guests, I mean, this is something I know we love to talk about who the First Lady and the President invite to be in the First Lady's guest box tonight. What's the significance of the folks that they invite? You mentioned the Syrian refugee, and I know there are other people who speak certainly to Obama's legacy, but also to some of his priorities that still lay ahead.
That's absolutely right. One of the most striking images we're going to see tonight in just less than a half hour, as you mentioned, is an empty chair. And that's to symbolize all of the victims of gun violence. That is something that has been a huge legislative priority of President Obama and many congressional Democrats, trying to close the so-called gun show loophole. But that empty seat is going to be just a very visually striking reminder of the deaths. There's also another very interesting guest tonight is Jim Obergefell. He is the plaintiff from that landmark Supreme Court case that made same-sex marriage the law of the land. A funny story, he was originally invited as a guest of Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, But then the White House, Senator Merkley says that when the White House found out that he had invited Jim Obergefell, they decided that was a great idea. So they extended their own invitation to Mr. Obergefell. And of course, you can't turn down the president. So he's sitting with the president tonight, and Senator Merkley has had a stand-in date come and be his guest tonight. But in addition to Jim Obergefell, what's going to be a fascinating split screen tonight is on the one side of the same-sex marriage debate, you've got Mr. Obergefell, and on the other, you're going to have Kim Davis, who was the Kentucky county clerk who you might remember refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses to couples seeking them in her county. She's been held up as a conservative hero among social conservatives. She was invited tonight as a guest of the conservative think tank, the Family Research Council, who had a ticket given to them by Congressman Jim Jordan, who is also the head of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. So each one of these guests that both Congressman and President Obama have invited tonight represent some sort of political item that is very important to them. And so it's going to be fascinating to see these various guests represent different political opinions on both sides of the aisle.
That's ABC's Ali Weinberg live for us inside the Capitol. Thanks, Ali. We'll be checking back in with you later. Lana, this is something you and I were talking about earlier. We love poring over that guest list, seeing who's going to be there, and trying to kind of read the tea leaves on what this means about what the president might be talking about.
And I was actually just looking to try and see who started this tradition of the First Lady's box. And one of the things that I read was that that when Jacqueline Kennedy would attend the State of the Union speeches, the journalists were always so interested in what she was wearing that so much attention started to really be drawn upstairs to that First Lady's box and helped to really make that tradition part of what all of us at home watch for. And we do know, in addition to all these people that are going to be in the First Lady's box, that they're making this very big statement this time by leaving one seat empty. And
that's right.
I don't think that has ever been done before, to represent and really bring home that very important personal issue for the president of gun violence.
Well, speaking of empty seats, we can also now report that the designated survivor for tonight's address has been named. A White House official has told ABC News that Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson will be tonight's designated cabinet member who will not attend the State of the Union address. This is, of course, a tradition dating back to who knows when, but of course ensuring that there is succession to continue if, God forbid, something were to happen at the Capitol building where all of the nation's leaders are gathering tonight. So that piece of trivia has been answered for us.
Exactly. Well, that's always the first target of an alien attack, right? The State of the Union address, because everybody is gathered there. So good to know that Jeh Johnson has us covered.